Do you want to learn what it's like to live, work, and play on Galveston Bay? Well, boy, are you in the right place. People contact me every day who are relocating, ready to retire, looking for a vacation home or short-term rental, and I love it. I love sharing my love of Galveston Bay with you. Are you ready to learn to live like you're on vacation every day? Well, stay tuned. Galveston Island is a small barrier reef on the Texas Gulf Coast. Galveston has so much to offer, I'm going to give you the complete breakdown in several videos. So let's get right to it. Today, I'm going to talk about the history of some of my favorite mansions, commercial buildings, attractions, immigration, and the seawall. I call Galveston Complete Breakdown Vlog Part 1. Number 1. Historic homes and buildings. The Menard House. We really can't talk about Galveston without talking about Michel B. Menard. Menard, a Canadian, was one of the founders of Galveston. In the 1830s, he began speculating in Texas land. I don't know if you're up on your Texas history, but at the time, land was only granted to Mexican-born Texans. So many of Menard's land transactions were put together by a Mexican named Juan Seguin. Texas history fact. Seguin fought under General Sam Houston at the Battle of San Jacinto. Seguin purchased about 4,600 acres at the east end of Galveston Island on behalf of Menard in 1836. Menard then created the Galveston City Company with Samuel May Adams and other prominent Texas businessmen in 1838. Galveston was incorporated as a city in 1839. Now, back to that beautiful Greek Revival home, often referred to as the Oaks. The Oaks was built in 1838 and most certainly one of the oldest wooden private residences and storm survivor on the island. Those 4,600 acres were considered Outlot 37, and that was the parcel Menard chose for his home. The outlot indicated that the Menard House would be built outside the city limits of Galveston. The Menard House was fabricated and then shipped by boat from Maine in parts. The combination of a shortage of carpenters in 1830s Texas and a surplus of cargo space in Texas-bound ships from the Northeast made prefabricated buildings inexpensive and practical. An interesting historical tidbit for you. Menard added 2 wings onto this home, and it was the venue for the very first Mardi Gras ball on Galveston Island, 1853. I can just imagine the magnificent halls decked out for Mardi Gras ball, the excitement in the air, the masquerades, the beads, the festive costumes and elegant decor in gold, purple, and green. It must have been amazing. Menard died in 1856, and his widow, Rebecca Menard, married Colonel J.S. Thrasher, the former United States consul in Havana, Cuba. Menard's family lived in the home until about 1879, and in 1880, the home was purchased by Edwin Ketchum, who was the police chief during the Great Storm of 1900. The Ketchum family retained the home well up until the late 1970s. After 20 years, though, the home had deteriorated and was in horrible disrepair. Threatened with demolition by the city of Galveston, the Galveston Historical Foundation and the National Trust for Historic Preservation acquired the Menard home in 1992. The Burns, a couple residing in Houston, Texas, purchased the home and meticulously researched and renovated this beautiful Greek Revival stunner. The Menard House is furnished with spectacular reproduction and period antique furnishings, rugs, and draperies. We were very fortunate that the Menard House suffered no significant damage during Hurricane Ike in 2008. A home this age and size, and you're reminded maintenance is never ending. As you can see, the grounds of the home of one of Galveston's founders is surely one you'll want to tour. The Menard House is available for private events and tours by appointment. Scottish Rite Cathedral. Built in 1929 in the exquisite Art Deco style by the renowned Texas architect Alfred C. Finn. I love seeing the eagles perched in the corners of the exterior of this building. This amazing building is home to a historically preserved 400-seat vaudeville-era theater. The historical theater contains beautifully crafted and one-of-a-kind apron stage with dozens of wonderfully illustrated fine art backdrops, capable of transporting you to a romantical medieval castle, the detail and the Renaissance landscapes, or make you feel like you are in the city of ancient Rome. Interesting tidbit for you. I had the opportunity to see the theater in its full glory recently. My better half and I went to see a play about the lives of a young family as they endured life at the turn of the century, love and tragedy, and the great storm of 1900 called Galveston Wind. The Baytown Little Theater put on a wonderful production on the anniversary of the great storm of 1900 this past September 2021. The Art Deco details throughout the building are stunning. The marble stairs and rich woodwork were gorgeous. It also features a magnificent library, an ornate ballroom, as well as the famed Egyptian room. Now, I gotta tell you, this Egyptian room is so amazing. It's a beautifully created replica of an ancient Egyptian temple. The details are rich in color, think black, red, and gold details. The masterful reliefs throughout the room kept my head up and in awe. It is so impressive in person. The photos really don't do it justice. It's truly one of the most spectacular rooms you can imagine. The Scottish Rite Cathedral is open to the public for tours in December during Dickens on the Strand, which includes the theater and that Egyptian room that I love so much. Please like and subscribe and click the little bell and you'll be notified every week about my new videos on what it's like to live, work, and play on Galveston Bay. Bishop's Palace. This is by far my personal favorite of all the private residences on the island. I've toured it more times than I can count during Christmas, Halloween, on the Historic Homes Tour, or whenever I entertain a friend from out of town. I never grow tired of the beauty and the rich details. I always see something I missed previously, and I never ever grow tired of the stunning details of this beautiful home. The Gresham Mansion was made of all stone and was strong enough to withstand the great storm of 1900. It's well known that the Gresham family welcomed hundreds of survivors of the Great Storm into their home. This beautiful home was built between 1887 and 1893 by my favorite and well-renowned Galveston architect, Nicholas J. Clayton, for Walter Gresham, his wife, Josephine, and their 9 children. Walter Gresham was a lawyer and a politician. In 1923, the Galveston-Houston Diocese of the Catholic Church purchased the Gresham's Castle for about $40,000. Gresham's Castle was renamed for the Most Reverend Christopher C.E. Byrne as the Bishop's Palace. The chapel was put in to accommodate Bishop Byrne, and it is a stunner. Stained glass windows, pews, and gilded artwork. Oh my goodness, it is really a sight to see. The details of the woodwork throughout the home, the gilded reliefs, the art glass chandeliers, oh my goodness. Did you know that the Bishop's Palace is a contributing building in the East End Historic District? And the house is also listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Architectural historians list the Bishop's Palace as one of the most significant of Victorian architecture residences in the country. It is truly a Nicholas J. Clayton masterpiece. I love the fireplaces, the alfrescoes, the tile work, the staircases and woodwork are stunning. If you love architecture, you don't want to miss seeing this stunning property. It is worth every penny of the admission. The Bryan Museum. I love the Bryan Museum and their mission to bring the history of Texas and the American West to life. The museum offers world-class collections, presentations, and wonderful opportunities for educational history. I've attended lectures on 100 Years of Weather, the Great Storm of 1900, and on my favorite pirate, Jean Lafitte. It's so interesting to see how we embrace our history. When I attended the Jean Lafitte lecture, I was one of the few people not in costume. Arrgh, matey, well now I know. The Bryan Museum was formerly the home of the Galveston Orphans Home. Now I gotta tell you, this home was not destroyed in the Great Storm of 1900. That was St. Mary's, and that property sat about where the Walmart is today on the seawall. Now, the building did suffer some damage, but is often misreported. This beautiful property had no orphans or nuns lost during the Great Storm of 1900. The Galveston Orphans Home is in a Renaissance Revival style. The exterior is St. Louis pressed granite brick, yellow in color, and it's trimmed with a beautiful terracotta. The grounds are lush and scattered with art sculptures and a wonderful fountain. It's a fantastic venue for a wedding. The Galveston Orphans Home was damaged during the 1915 hurricane and again during Hurricane Carla in 1961 when a tornado ripped through the orphanage's backyard, but only a slight bit of damage in 2008 during Hurricane Ike. The Moody Mansion. Legend has it that throughout her life, Narcissa Willis had asked her husband, entrepreneur and cotton broker Richard S. Willis, to build a magnificent mansion in Galveston. After all, she had a reputation to uphold. She was a socialite and married to a well-heeled entrepreneur. Richard Willis objected. His wishes were to keep his assets liquid to ensure his 10 children were taken care of upon his death. Unfortunately, Richard Willis died in 1892, and Narcissa had the home she and her husband and their 10 children had lived in torn down and began plans to build a much more opulent home on the site in 1893. Her 10 grieving children never visited the extravagant mansion designed to bring them back to Narcissa's beloved Galveston. The children were devastated about Willis's choices after their father's death. Sad as it was, Narcissa ultimately lived alone in that magnificent mansion for 7 years with a housekeeper who was paid extremely well for her services at about $1,000 annually, which is over 3 times the wages a housekeeper would have normally received at the time. Upon Narcissa's death in 1899, her daughter Beatrice put the home up for sale. After the Great Storm of 1900 devastated Galveston that tragic September, many of the bidders pulled out of the sale. Moody won the mansion for $20,000, a very small fraction of the mansion's true value at the time of over $100,000. Did you know that that would equate to over $3 million today? I just can't imagine how those 10 children felt after the loss of their father. Moody, his wife, and 4 children quickly moved into the home and actually celebrated their very first Christmas at the mansion that December of 1900. The Moodys must have enjoyed this beautiful property and the grounds. It's truly stunning. The mansion boasts 31 rooms, 5 bathrooms, and many high-tech innovations of the era. Some of these innovations included a dumbwaiter, speaking tubes in the pantry for communicating with the kitchen staff in the basement, heated drying racks in the laundry room. The lighting fixtures used both gas and electricity, and a 1-passenger elevator. As with many of the mansions on Galveston Island, it had its own rainwater cistern. Members of the Moody family enjoyed the beautiful property until 1986, when it was turned into a historic museum honoring the Moody family. In 2008, Hurricane Ike flooded the basement. In 2014, the basement was opened as the Galveston Children's Museum. The little ones love this museum, and it's well worth the small price of admission. Please like and subscribe and click the little bell, and you'll be notified each week of my new videos on what it's like to live, work, and play on Galveston Bay. The Ashton Villa. The Ashton Villa was built in 1859 by James Monroe Brown, who by the late 50s had developed the largest hardware store west of the Mississippi. Brown purchased 4 lots at the corner of Broadway and 24th Street. This beautiful mansion boasts a lot of firsts. Not only was it the first mansion to ever be built on Broadway, it was also the first mansion to be built on the island and one of the first private brick and cast iron private residences on the island. Ashton Villa has weathered many a storm including the Great Storm of 1900, when the floodwaters invaded its first floor. The beautiful Ashton Villa is now a historic museum, and it speaks movingly about the lives of an upper-class family in the 18 and 1900s. Definitely a property you're going to want to see for yourself. Immigration Center, Pelican Island, and Seawolf Park. When it comes to immigration history, most of us think of Ellis Island as a point of entry to the U.S. But before Ellis Island opened in 1892, hundreds of thousands of immigrants passed through the port of Galveston. The vast majority of immigrants arrived through Galveston were drawn to Texas by the promise of cheap land and religious freedom from the 1840s to the 1920s. Galveston was one of the largest cities in Texas until the Great Storm of 1900. The Great Storm of 1900 devastated the city, and over 12,000 lives were lost. Galveston is known for an arrival of Jewish immigrants from Europe. Immigrants from all over the world entered the United States through Galveston, including Europe, Central and South America, and Asia. The station in Galveston was built on Pelican Island. The federal government replaced state administrations in processing immigrants at the turn of the century and redirected the flow of immigration from the Northeast U.S. to Texas. Pelican Island became federal property, and the government constructed an immigration center and quarantine station on Pelican Island. Quarantine centers already existed at other stations because the idea was immigrants brought diseases that could easily spread to U.S. citizens. And after an outbreak of yellow fever, the quarantine station on Pelican Island was set up to make sure the disease did not reach the people of the great state of Texas. The quarantine center was based on the one at Ellis Island, but it was never as substantial or nearly as effective. Galveston has had many monikers and was once known as the Ellis Island of the West. She processed fewer immigrants than Ellis Island, but at one time, one of the largest immigration stations in the West. Between 1906 and 1914, nearly 50,000 immigrants arrived at Galveston, including Swiss, Australians, Romanians, English, Poles, Bohemians, Italians, Dutch, and well over 10,000 Jews. The immigration station was damaged by hurricanes in 1915 and 1916. It was then moved to 21st Street. World War I significantly reduced the number of immigrants entering through the port of Galveston, and the center was eventually bulldozed in 1972. Today, if you visit Pelican Island, you'll see that it is part of the city of Galveston, home to the Texas A&M University at Galveston, 2 museum ships, a destroyer escort USS Stewart, and submarine USS Cavala. I've toured that submarine, and I cannot imagine living and working in those tight spaces. There's also some great fishing at Seawolf Park. We always see fishermen there. Across from the harbor, you can see the Bolivar Ferry, the Coast Guard, and ships waiting to come through the port of Galveston. Whether it's a ferry ride or a Sunday boat ride and fishing, it's a great way to spend the day with your family and friends. Seawolf Park is certainly worth a tour for history buffs and fishermen of all ages. Seawolf Parkway is the only street that runs across the island and is accessible via the Pelican Island Causeway and Harborside. Mosquito Fleet, Pier 19 history. Galveston Island and Galveston Bay are well known to be a long-standing shrimping area just south of Houston, Texas. The rich marine sources of Galveston Bay and offshore waters were as important in the development of Galveston as its role as the best seaport between New Orleans and Tampico. Shrimp in these waters came to be harvested by a fleet of small sailboats clustered at Pier 19. Their small size and spindly masts and booms, aside from a certain ever-present factor in their environment, gave them together the name Mosquito Fleet. There were more than 100 of them by the turn of the 20th century. Throughout the years, the Mosquito Fleet docked here among other ships, enriching the city and nation, blending Asian and European fisher customs into American fishing customs. The international custom of blessing the fishing fleet is observed yearly in Galveston. Commercial fishermen here work in the industry, and the skill set is often passed down generation to generation. You have got to check out the mosquito fleet at Pier 19, and if you're lucky, you might see one of Galveston Bay's oldest shrimpers, Jerome Pops Coons, and his professional female deckhand, shrimp diva, Nikki Johnson Coons, on the St. Vincent or on Facebook. Tell Pops and Nikki Sherry sent you. During the course of the 20th century, pleasure piers became America's centerpiece for entertainment and family amusement. Amusement parks were all the rage in the 1900s. Electric Park brought amusement-seeking tourists to Galveston after its opening in 1906. Located at 23rd and Seawall Boulevard, just 2 blocks from the current Pleasure Pier, this electric amusement park lit up the Galveston sky with thousands of incandescent bulbs. Sightseers gathered to Electric Park to encounter fun-filled attractions, including a roller coaster, carousel, a movie theater, and the park's treasured possession, the aerial swing. The Pleasure Pier was originally built as a recreational facility for the U.S. military during World War II. In the 1940s, it was converted into the Galveston Pleasure Pier and quickly became the crown as the largest of its kind in the U.S. America's top dance bands routinely filled the Mammoth Marine Ballroom, while outside in an open-air stadium, patrons watched movies under a starlit sky. The Pleasure Pier not only had fishing facilities, but a full carnival midway and boasted an aquarium, and it truly exceeded the expectations of everyone who visited. Galveston was great at promoting herself, and in the early 1900s, she was also known as the Coney Island of the South. Galveston's Pleasure Pier served as an iconic family destination through the subsequent decades, stimulating the island's tourism, commerce, and pride. The Galveston Pier operated as a tourist destination until 1961, when Hurricane Carla ruthlessly damaged the property. Hurricane Carla struck the Texas Gulf Coast as a Category 4 and one of the most intense storms to ever strike the U.S. The Pleasure Pier opened in May of 2012 to crowds of excited Galvestonians and tourists alike. This multi-million-dollar family entertainment destination is owned by Tillman Fertitta of the Houston Rockets, the Golden Nugget Hotels and Casinos, and Vic and Anthony's Fine Steakhouses. He brings the glory of Galveston's famous history into the present day with fun for young and old alike. There is no other Gulf Coast destination offering what the Pleasure Pier does. The Pleasure Pier features family fun, attractions including 16 rides, midway games, retail shops, and a wide selection of food venues, including Texas' first bubblegum shrimp company, all perched over the Gulf of Mexico for amazing views. We love the Pleasure Pier, and I think we can all relate to the sentimental attraction of an amusement park. Please comment and let me know if you have any questions about Galveston, the Gulf Coast, or real estate. I'd love to hear from you. Seawall History. The Great Storm of 1900 was the hurricane that nearly destroyed Galveston on that tragic day, September 8, 1900. It still ranks as the nation's deadliest natural disaster. The Great Storm of 1900's tidal surge inundated Galveston, leaving an estimated 12,000 dead and millions of dollars of destruction and damage. In September 1901, the Texas State Legislature approved an act providing for the construction of a seawall for Galveston. A board comprised of 3 engineers and a brigadier general organized to draft plans for the future protection of Galveston, including the construction of a seawall and to raise the city's elevation. In 1902, the board issued its report calling for the construction of a seawall that ran from the South Jetty near 8th Street to Avenue D and 6th Street, and westward to 39th Street along the Gulf of Mexico. The initial segment of the seawall was completed in July 1904. This portion, made of concrete, was 3.3 miles long, 16 feet at its base, and 5 feet on top, 17 feet high. The outer face of the seawall was curved to carry the waves upwards. Riprap were placed along the base, facing the Gulf of Mexico to break up the wave action. The initial segment was completed at a cost of almost $1.6 million. It proved its worth first 5 years after completion during the hurricane in 1909, and another critical test came with the hurricane of 1915. Construction continued up until 1963, when the seawall was extended down to 99th Street. The seawall dramatically lowered the loss of life and destruction and continues to protect our beloved Queen of the Gulf. Well, there you have it, y'all. Galveston Vlog Part 1. Are you ready to learn to live like you're on vacation every day? I hope you found some great information in this video and that you'll check out my other videos. If you're thinking about moving or relocating, make sure you reach out, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, heck, send a carrier pigeon. However you want to get in touch with me, I've got your back when moving to Galveston Bay. If you liked the video, please hit the subscribe button and click the little bell. You'll be notified every week about my new videos on what it's like to live, work, and play on Galveston Bay. Now, I know you like the video because you're still here. I want to give you my free Galveston Bay relocation guide. Click on the link in the description below. There, you can download my free Galveston Bay relocation guide. Register for real-time property listings, along with tips, tricks, and helpful information about everything real estate. Till next time,